Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. I now call this regular meeting of the KCRHA Implementation Board to order. I'd like to start by grounding our work in our theory of change, which is if we create a homeless response system that centers people with lived experience, then we will be able to focus on responding to needs and eliminating inequities in order to end homelessness for all. This is a hybrid meeting, as all of our meetings will be going forward. So there's a physical location as well as virtual access via this Zoom meeting. I want to thank Mayor Nancy Bacchus and the City of Auburn for letting us borrow their chambers today for that physical location. If you give me just a moment, here's one of our board members is trying to get in to session as well. Sean, if you can check with KCRHA Brandon just to make sure she's able to get in, that'd be great. I apologize for the late start. We had a little bit of technical difficulties. So before we begin our roll call, I want to mention that today we're really thrilled to introduce 3 new board members, KCRHA Brandon, Ben Martz, and Christopher Ross. KCRHA will hopefully be joining us very shortly. After roll call, I'll ask you to briefly introduce yourselves if that's okay, with your name, who you represent, and why you decided to join. And Sean, if you don't mind, I may go and take the role myself so that you can work on getting KCRHA into the meeting. First, Pastor Carrie Anderson. KCRHA Brandon, we'll come back to her. Nate Caminos.
Here.
Thank you. Paula Carvalho is excused at a prior engagement. John Chelmanak.
Here.
Thank you, John.
I'm here. Yeah.
Gotcha. Ben Martz.
Here.
Good to see you. Gordon McHenry Jr. is excused as well. Also at a prior engagement. Damian Padnott.
Here.
Michael Ramos.
Here.
Thank you. Somehow ready. I'm here. We need a spotted elk.
Present.
Thank you. KCRHA Brandon.
Here.
Great to have you. Sarah Rankin.
Here.
Great. And Christopher Ross.
Here.
And do we have either of our alternates, either Lamont Green or KCRHA Floyd here?
Lamont was unable to make it today, but I do believe that he was trying to make sure that KCRHA got a link to the meeting. I think there was some difficulty with that earlier in the day, so I'm not sure what the status is. I just saw a flurry of emails earlier this morning trying to make sure that KCRHA got the link.
Okay, we'll try to keep working on that. Thank you, Sarah. Well, we do have quorum, and so we will proceed. Before we move forward, I want to take that moment just to have a very brief introduction from each of our new members. Ben, if you'd like to share briefly.
Sure. My name is Ben Moritz. I'm an affordable housing developer based in Seattle. I'm here as a nominee from the city of Seattle, and I've spent quite a bit of time reviewing all the previous RHA Implementation Board meetings, and I'm really thrilled to be a part of what looks to be a really turning into a really amazing, high-performing organization that will really serve our region well.
Thanks, Ben. KCRHA.
Yes, hello everyone. I'm KCRHA. I am she, her pronouns. I am one of the founders and one of the co-chairs of the Washington State Lived Experience Coalition. One of the things I would say for my reason of joining this board is just to raise my voice as on a personal level and as a coalition member to just show the strength in as an individual lived person of color that has lived experience on the streets, but also as a representation of a whole coalition with different voices, different experiences, different traumas and triggers that need to come together and change the narrative and show that, you know, without us, there's a hierarchy. And we don't need to necessarily do on different levels, but we need to do it as a unity. And so it's beyond accountability. Um, you know, so that's kind of my point of being here. Look at
Christopher?
Hi, everybody. My name is Christopher Ross. I'm the CEO and president of Seattle Humane Society. And I am nominated to the board by Dow Constantine, the county executive's office. So thank you for the opportunity to be here. I had a background experience working with Compass Housing Alliance, so working with human shelters and low-income housing. And I had the good fortune of making a shift to move to animal welfare. And I like to think that I've had the opportunity now to attend both ends of the leash. And I'm realizing that this work has just a huge synergy, and it's nowhere near done. So attending to our community and meeting the needs of everybody, from fair and equitable housing to shelters, and understanding that the animals are such a critical part of it. So I'm thrilled to be able to continue the work that I'm doing now with animal welfare and see through more of the work that I started when I was at Compass. And I believe that this is something that Seattle is definitely set up to succeed on. I know it's been a hard road to solve for, but I believe that we can get there. And I'm thrilled to be able to be part of this.
Great. Thank you. Thank you to all three of you. And we're thrilled to have you as part of the team here. I also want to acknowledge that Pastor Carrie Anderson has joined us as well. I would also like to acknowledge that King County is located on the unceded traditional land of the Coast Salish peoples. We honor this land and its people, past and present, and we're committed to directing funding and resources to organizations led by and in support of Native and Indigenous people. Next. And for the public, I want to mention that at every meeting we do reserve time for public comment. If you'd like to provide comments, please add your name and the city you're from to the chat below. And Sean will call on you in order after the consent agenda. Before we vote on that consent agenda, though, I do want to discuss a potential change to today's meeting agenda. I had a request today from KCRHA staff that we meet an executive session with legal counsel to discuss an issue of potential litigation or legal risk. This is allowed by RCW 42.30.110, section 1. I do believe we should accommodate this request from staff, and so I would ask for a motion that we meet an executive session for up to 30 minutes immediately following public comment.
I so move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any
Aye.
opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. We will plan on a 30-minute executive session, going into executive session after our public comment period. Next on our consent, so I will say that this, for the public, that this may mean that we will not be able to accommodate a full briefing on the launch today of the new partnership for Zero Housing Command Center, but we'll make sure to put information on that exciting development into the chat. In terms of our consent agenda, on our consent agenda is just approval of the minutes from our August and September meetings. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved, Gary Anderson.
A second?
Second.
All right, thanks. All those in favor of approving the minutes for the consent agenda, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, consent agenda passes on voice vote. We now have 10 minutes for public comment. So reminder, if you wish to comment and have not already added your name and city to the chat box or signed up in person, please do so now. Each person will have 2 minutes to comment, and we ask that the comments be related to today's agenda. We'll start with people on Zoom and then move to the people in the room if there are any. Public comment is now open at 2:16.
First up for public comment is going to be Bill Carlin Hackett.
Wonderful, Bill.
I'd like not to start my comment immediately. There was no indication Auburn City Hall was being used as a in residence today. It's not on your webpage. And chat is disabled right now, so can't put our names in there. Okay. So that makes it a little hard for the newbies. I invited a lot of people to come comment today, and having to navigate this is a little hard. Yes, the Housing Command Center is being celebrated, but let me just say, we do outreach in Seattle for vehicles, and we follow a published overt schedule of at least 2 or more sweeps a week, and not published are covert sweeps that are happening due to orange tags, which we are not notified about until someone calls us. So we're seeing a lot of impounds continue, and we're having to deal with a lot of stress around that in terms of dealing with it at the 11th hour. We need better partnerships with the Seattle on the streets. It is escalating right now to where it is becoming more and more difficult to simply even be in a park within Seattle, which is legal for everybody during the day. I just want you to understand that the command center is not controlling any of us outside of downtown. And we're just seeing things get continually worse and worse and harder for those who are homeless. And I know this may not all be on your agenda, but it's a little bit of an irony to me that we're celebrating a command center when about 75 to 80% of the rest of the city is struggling like crazy. Our Wednesday morning outreach meetings are exercises in frustration. So I said this morning, I think RHA can walk and chew gum at the same time. I'd like you to please prove that to all of us. Thanks.
Thank you, Bill. And before we move forward, thank you for bringing to our attention the difficulties with the chat. Sean, if we can try to open up that chat, that would be great. In the meantime, to all our public attendees, I apologize for that lack of chat availability yet. If you can raise your hand, we will be able to call on you. Thank you.
And next up for public comment is going to be John Grant.
John, please go ahead when you feel ready.
Greetings, members of the Implementation Board. My name is John Grant, and I'm the Chief Strategy Officer for the Low Income Housing Institute. Thank you for your time today. Our agency submitted to the Implementation Board a letter on September 27th concerning the flawed issuance of a corrective action plan we received from RHA. We are requesting relief from this board by formally rescinding the corrective action that was issued on September 23rd, which stated we violated the critical incident reporting policy. On July 1st, RHA emailed providers a memorandum of a new policy concerning critical incident reports that outlined what types of incidents and when they should be reported to RHA. The policy was developed with no provider feedback. It failed to protect client confidentiality, was administratively burdensome, and impossible to comply with. Across the entire social service sector, agencies demanded a pause and revision to the policy. In July 22nd, RHA hosted a listening session to collect feedback and announced a 30-day pause. To date, RHA has never announced or transmitted a new critical incident report policy. It was quite to our surprise that we received a formal corrective action plan for failing to comply with the policy. It is also important to note that even though the policy was not in place, Lehigh did report the incident per the policy's requirements. Lehigh reached out to dozens of providers, and no one else has been informed of a new policy being put in place. At a recent Seattle King County Coalition for the Homeless meeting, Chief Program Officer Peter Lynn was present and confirmed that the policy was on hold. We have not received a response from RHA for our request to rescind the corrective action plan. It is also worth noting that this is not the first time that Lehigh has received a frivolous and improper corrective action plan, and it is now our assumption that this is becoming a practice of establishing a false record of noncompliance. We request your attention to this matter and rescind the corrective action plan immediately. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for your comment, John.
And then we have Elizabeth Maupin. Elizabeth Maupin, are you there for comment?
Getting the microphone to work.
Oh, there we go. We can hear you now.
This is Elizabeth Maupin. I live outside of Seattle in Issaquah and in King County. I was homeless and living in my vehicle on the east side many, many years ago, and have worked with people living in their vehicles now. We need some way of making it possible for people who are living in vehicles to get into housing in a reasonable period of time. And if we cannot get them into housing in a reasonable period of time, it would be very helpful to set aside some places where they can legally park, have access to phone and sanitation and necessary services while they wait for affordable housing. I hope you will keep this in mind as you put your plans forward, that not all of the vehicle residents are in downtown Seattle. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Sean, do we have other public comments?
We do not. There's nobody else with their hand raised for public comment. That will conclude our public comment period. Thank you.
So, as per our motion, we're going to go into executive session now, starting at...
Sorry, Simha, sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to make sure I've heard from Jaja that she has joined through the public link, and I just want to make sure she's promoted to panelist for the executive session.
Okay. Sean, can you please go ahead and have her promoted?
Thank you.
Sarah.
And just from a technical standpoint, am I going to, or do we have to, the board members and those attending the executive session have to exit this meeting and go to the other link?
We will, and then we will have to return to this.
Okay, but we do have to end the end. Okay.
Oh,
Thank
okay.
you.
If
Is that right?
if that's the case, then I just want to make sure that Jaja has the proper link. So she's floating out there in the middle of this meeting and the executive session. So I see the message from Sean in the chat that where the executive link is. So I'll pass that on to Jaja.
Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate that. All
So
right.
we're jumping over now.
Yes, we're going to head over now, and for the public, we will be returning in 30 minutes at 2:55. And we enter executive session now.
Just so the people who are still here know that that did not work for me, and now I don't have the link. Oh, for Pete's sake. Or maybe I'm in. No, I'm not.
Excuse me, Mr. Chilmanack. I think that they
Yes.
put the link at the bottom of the chat for Jaja. So you would have to click on that link.
Yeah,
and
but
then
that's not available. And
not
what I
working.
did is I did exactly what I said I asked to do, which was leave the meeting. I should have clicked on the link first, and now it's not in the chat because I left the
Got it.
meeting.
You need me to
So
copy and paste it again?
yeah, could you do that? That would be
Yeah,
great.
sure.
I apologize.
Yeah, no worries. You see it?
It just popped in. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no worries.
Hi, Katara.
Hi, I don't know who said hi, but hello.
It's Meg.
I'm Meg.
Hello.
This is Juanita Spotted Elk. I tried that Zoom link a number of times, and I've been trying to get in, and it's not working, or nobody will let me in.
Hi, this is Meg. Can you what is your email address? I'll chat Sean and make sure he looks for you.
Spotted Elk, Juanita, WANETA, numeral 1 at gmail.com.
Okay. Let me go over, let me chat Sean and see if he can, so try the link again and maybe he can pull you in to the meeting.
That link, I keep clicking on it and it says, it says sign in if you're the host.
Oh, right. So Sean is the host. So if you click on that, then he'll see you on the kind of the list of people who click the link, and then he can pull you into the meeting.
Okay, I'll try that link again, see what happens.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. Just updating from the executive meeting that they anticipate being about 7 to 10 more minutes, and then we'll be returning to finish the implementation board meeting. Thank you for your patience.
All right. Welcome back, everyone. We are returning from executive session. We are now moving on to the next part of our agenda, in which we will have hear from the state auditor, who will walk us through the official exit conference for our recent single state audit. So I'd like to recognize that governing committee members were invited to this section of the meeting and provided all audit materials. So I'll hand it over to our guest from the state auditor's office now. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for the opportunity to have us present the results of our audit. My name is Joe Simmons. I'm the audit manager for our audit team here in Seattle. And I'm here with Sophia Salem, who is the assistant audit manager who served as a supervisor on our audit. And Daniel Thompson was the audit lead on the audit. He's not here with us today. On the next slide, just want to talk a little bit about an overview of our office. We, as the state auditor's office, look at our job as to be able to provide independent, transparent examinations of all the local governments throughout the state of Washington, including auditing the state itself. And we are an independent state agency that reports to an independent state elected official, Pat McCarthy, who is a state auditor. And she definitely looks as our role as to be able to help provide a window into government, as I said, independent, transparent examinations, and also in doing so, being able to provide increased trust in government through that. And then also through our audits and our recommendations, and also through the audits conducted by our performance audit division, we look at ways that we can help improve the efficiency and effectiveness of government. And again, thank you for your time today. Please let us know if you have any questions as we go through the presentation, and I'll turn it over to Sophia to talk about the results of our audits.
So I'm just going to go through our audit results, and we conducted 3 different types of audits. The first one that I'm going to talk about is the accountability audit results. And if you received or obtained the materials that we provided for this meeting, these are summaries on the slides of what you might see in the packet. So again, at the end, let us know if you have any questions about where to find the content in the packet that we provided. For accountability audit results, we looked at basically the fiscal year, so 2021. And just as the results in brief, the report describes the overall results and conclusions for the areas we examined. And this is a paragraph directly from the report that says, in those selected areas that we looked at, the authority's operations were complied in all material respects with applicable state laws, regulations, and its own policies, and provided adequate controls over the safeguarding of public resources. And just to note here at the bottom, in keeping with general auditing practices, we do not examine every transaction, activity, policy, internal control, or area. As a result, no information is provided on areas that were not examined. And on the next slide, we document which areas we looked at. We looked at open public meetings, so compliance with minutes, meetings, executive session requirements. And we looked at financial condition, which means reviewing for indications of financial distress. We wouldn't expect to see anything at this point since the authority just started operations. The next report I'm going to go over is the financial statement audit results. And again, this is for fiscal year 2021, so January through December. And just to point out the results, this is auditing language here, but it was a clean report. And so formally we say it's an unmodified opinion issued. And this opinion is issued in accordance with US GAAP. And the audit is conducted in accordance with government auditing standards. We also have an internal control report. So internal control compliance over financial reporting. So we identified no significant deficiencies in internal control. We identified no deficiencies that we consider to be material weaknesses, and we noted no instances of non-compliance that were material to the financial statements of the authority. Here's a slide about required communications that we need to make, that we didn't identify any material misstatements during the audit, and there were no uncorrected misstatements that have been identified. We just want to highlight two areas that we identified as areas of significant risk during the audit that we looked at. One is something that we look at for every audit, which is management override controls. And the other area was the implementation of GASB 96, which is the GASB about subscription-based information technology arrangements. And we did not identify any concerns over those areas. The final report that we issued is related to federal grant compliance, which we also refer to as a single audit. And again, this is for fiscal year 2021, January through December. Like the previous slide, this is auditor language. It just means that there was a clean report that we had, but formally it's unmodified opinion issued. So the opinion issued on the authority's compliance with requirements applicable to its major program, and the audit conducted in accordance with government auditing standards and uniform guidance, which is the federal regulations. Internal control and compliance over major programs. In this part of the report, we identify no significant deficiencies in internal control. We identify no deficiencies that we consider to be material weaknesses, and we noted no instances of non-compliance that are required to be reported. So up here it mentions major program. There was one major program for the authority in 2021, and that was Continuum of Care program. The amount expended was $126,790. And in future audits, we expect to look at more. We expect that number to go up. And we just have some closing remarks and a couple other slides, and I'll pass it back to Joe, but otherwise it was a great audit.
So as Sophia said, just a few more slides, just some kind of closing remarks about the audit and our office. So our costs are in alignment with the final estimate we provided the authority as far as what the cost of the audit would be. And we will be returning next year, likely in the summer of 2022, to conduct those audits that we conducted for 2021. So the accountability audit, financial statement audit, and then the audit of your federal programs. And as Sophia said, I know you all know that obviously there's been an increase in size of the authority from 2021 to 2022. So we'll be auditing those additional federal programs for the 2021 audit. And the estimated cost for the next audit is in that packet that we provided. And then on the next slide, we have already issued our report. One of the requirements under the federal single audit is that we are required to issue the report by a deadline of 9 months after the fiscal year ends. So we have issued the report and did meet that deadline. It was issued September 15th. And that is available on our website. And obviously we had notified the authority when it was published, so that could be filed. And we always provide an audit survey when the report is issued. We're always happy to get feedback and opinions on our services, and always are interested in any feedback that we have as to what we can do to continue to improve. And on the next slide, just some information about other services through our office. As I said at the start, as an office, we look at ways we can help to work together to improve government. So we have a division that's called the Local Government Support Team, and that works on the Budget and Accounting Reporting System Manual that provides guidance on how to submit and prepare reports and accounting for financial transactions, and also on the required annual filing of a report to the state. And this team also provides accounting and training related to reporting and accounting. And then we also have a help desk that's open to all local governments where you can submit questions related to any technical questions related to accounting and reporting. And then we also have the Center for Government Innovation, and that looks at ways that we can provide information about process improvements. So if you contact them, they do have staff available that can provide facilitations related to process improvements at no additional cost to the government. Also team building leadership workshops. And then we have a financial intelligence tool where, as I noted, all local governments submit annual reports to the state, and we gather that information and provide statistics on the various local governments as far as their revenues, expenditures, and then this intelligence tool is a way that it also provides that information available to all users, the public, legislatures, local governments in a way that's hopefully fairly user-friendly. And then in the next slide, just some examples of the resources available through our Center for Government Innovation. So they have guidance related to internal controls for payroll, purchasing, bidding, procurement, segregation duties, and just some tips on what to look for in those areas. And then also, as we all know, cybersecurity risks continue to increase. So we have some guidance on what local governments can do to try to help minimize those risks. And on the next slide, just want to say thank you to authority officials and staff for the timely communications throughout the audit process. I definitely appreciate how well staff worked with us throughout the audit in this first year that you were audited, and particular really worked closely with Meg Barclay and Tiffany Brooks, Ying Chen, and also Jolene Price. So really wanted to say really appreciated how timely they were in the communications and responses when we requested information throughout the audit. So lastly, just wanted to be available for any questions you might have about the audit or the audit reports.
Thank you so very much to the State Auditor's Office and for coming here today to share with us. I know the RHA staff really appreciated how wonderful you all were to work with. Do we have any questions from the board for State Auditor's Office? Okay, see some shaking heads no. All right, so thank you all. Really appreciate your coming.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, we have we'll be hearing from KCRHA Jordan, our Chief Ombuds, with an update for us.
KCRHA, you are muted.
Sorry, I was on mute. Can you all see my PowerPoint presentation? And is that the only thing you can see at this on the screen at the moment?
That's correct.
Okay, perfect. Great, so I'll get started. So afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is KCRHA Jordan, and I have the privilege of serving as the Chief Ombudsperson for the Regional Homelessness Authority. As many of you know, the establishment of the Ombuds Office reflects RHA's commitment to centering lived experience, equity, and ensuring accountability. And as I move forward in discussing the work of standing up the Ombuds Office, it would be remiss of me not to acknowledge the contributions of the Lived Experience Coalition, who have been a driving partner in advocating for the office, shaping its design, and holding the office accountable as we move forward in its work. I hope what I present to you is a reflection of this ongoing work in community with others. So my goal with this presentation is to provide an overview of the role of the Ombuds, what that means for the Regional Homeless Authority and the community it serves, and discuss current progress and next steps for the office. So what is an ombudsperson? Ombuds independently assist individuals and groups in the resolution of complex or concerns and help support agencies in making changes that prevent those issues from reoccurring. So as we discuss further, you'll see that the way that the community conceives of the Ombuds role is a bit more robust than the definitions provided by professional organizations like the American Bar Association that create model standards for Ombuds offices. So with that said, when you review the essential characteristics of most entities that identify as an ombuds, you'll find these three characteristics. One, independence. That means that the ombuds is free from interference in the performance of their duties. Confidentiality. This means that an ombuds does not disclose and is not required to disclose any information provided in confidence except to address an imminent risk or serious harm. And three, impartiality. This means that the ombuds conducts inquiries in a manner free from initial bias and conflicts of interest. Now, because the standards of practice and responsibilities can vary depending on what model was used to create an ombuds office, I always think it's important to distinguish between the different types of ombuds: classical, organizational, and advocacy. And so when we're thinking about a classical ombuds, this includes legislative and executive ombuds who are typically appointed by a legislative body or an executive agency. These ombuds hold agencies accountable to the public, assist in a legislative oversight. They also conduct investigations, issue public reports, and advocate for change within the entity and publicly. Then you have your organizational ombuds. These are typically in colleges and corporations, but you do see these in government agencies. So for example, the city of Seattle has an ombuds that helps employees navigate issues using an organizational ombuds model. These ombuds focus on mediation techniques and attempting to resolve concerns among individuals. They usually do not conduct formal investigations or issue investigative reports. And then lastly, you have your advocacy ombuds. This type is typically seen in long-term care settings and to a lesser degree in corrections, sometimes juvenile justice settings. These ombuds serve as an advocate on behalf of a population that is designated in law, and they are charged with representing constituents' interests regarding agency or institutional policies. So given this information, I really want you to keep in mind or think about what category would this ombuds office fall under. Kind of answering that question, I think it's helpful to go to the interlocal agreement that governs the Office of the Ombuds work. So Section 6 of the interlocal agreement, which you see on this slide, lists out the responsibilities of the ombuds. However, I know that this is a horrible slide. And so on the next slide, I have, hopefully, put this in a much easier to read format, listing out the duties that are actually, within the ILA. And I'm not going to read every single one, but for the most part, the Ombuds Office is expected to promote public confidence in the authority's ability to serve people experiencing homelessness, ensure ease of contact for people using services, investigate and respond to complaints, collect data, partner with the Regional Homeless Authority, the Implementation Board, and the community to recommend improvements. And we are charged with reporting independently and directly to the Implementation Board twice a year. Also, just please note that the interlocal agreement requires the ombuds to serve community members, contract holders, and employees of the Regional Homeless Authority. So our constituency and who we serve with this office is fairly broad. So going back to that question, and in thinking about the different types of ombuds, what the ILA requires of this office and what the community expects from this office, I want to revisit my earlier question about, well, what type of ombuds office are we establishing? So I propose that we are a hybrid ombuds, and this is why. In reviewing the interlocal agreement that outlines the responsibilities of the Ombuds Office and the community expectations as laid out in the NIS implementation report, I believe those responsibilities and expectations fall within the 7 Ombuds activities listed in this chart. However, when you compare the different types of ombuds and their different responsibilities, what our office has been asked to do spans across all the different types of ombuds, which is why I think we're well suited to a hybrid approach that incorporates elements from all the models. And the reason why I think it's so important to kind of talk about this, because you'll often hear people say, well, I've had experience with the ombuds office and that's not what they did, or, I met with this ombuds office and they were able to do this or that. And so I think it's important for people to understand that there's so much variation within the ombuds profession. And I just think us having that shared understanding is really important. So Discuss the duties and responsibilities of the Ombuds Office, but I think it's equally important to discuss the main functions or the practical use and purposes of the office, which are one, to provide customer service by resolving issues with complaints and helping community members navigate and find resolutions to service inquiries. But as a quick note, I use customer service in the broadest sense of the term, referring to all constituents of the Regional Homeless Authority, unhoused community members, providers, Regional Homeless Authority employees. And I highlight that and make that distinction because we have received feedback from those with lived experience that they do not want to be referred to as customers or consumers. Two, community engagement. The hope is that the Ombuds Office will be responsible for ongoing engagement that is proactive and not just reactive to inbound requests. This office will also continually solicit feedback through focus groups, interviews, and possibly site visits, as well as evaluate collected data through an equity framework while prioritizing the needs of overrepresented populations. Finally, if the office operates as intended with the first two functions, it will be able to drive systems change twofold. First, by centering the voices of people with lived experience and advocating for their needs, and second, through building and maintaining strong relationships with providers and community members with the aim to improve services for all of the agency's constituencies. So earlier, I discussed the three essential characteristics of an ombuds established by the larger ombuds profession. What you see on this slide are the standards of practice that this ombuds will adhere to as determined in partnership with the community. Those are independence, impartiality in context, confidentiality, racial equity and justice, and restorative and transformative justice. And just if I can expand on those a bit, when I say standard, when I say impartiality and context, the point of this standard is to acknowledge that blanket concepts of neutrality, fairness, and impartiality can actually harm those furthest from power and perpetuate institutional racism and inequities. So it is a hope that the Ombuds team will commit to actively challenging the pre-conscious and conscious thought patterns that result in bias and prejudice as we do the work that we are charged with. And when we think about restorative justice, the idea behind this standard of practice is to create a framework that acknowledges harm, the obligations that result from that harm, with the hope of encouraging engagement and participation by all impacted stakeholders. The Ombuds Office doesn't want our role as an accountability mechanism to be seen as a threat or something negative, but really as a pathway to support those who cause harm and those who have been impacted by harm towards resolution. Or to put this more simply, the office wants to support others in acknowledging and in demonstrating accountability. Finally, I do want to be clear about independence as a standard of practice. The LEC and the larger community has raised the importance of getting the structure of the office right to inoculate against inequity and to set a precedent for creating an ombud structure that is accountable to the community and is in alignment with the Regional Homeless Authority's theory of change. This will be critically important to living out what the ILA requires of this office and promoting confidence in the authority. So typically in an entity like the Regional Homeless Authority, the ombuds would likely be a classical executive model, be independent of the agency, and would likely have some sort of authorizing legislation outlining in specific detail the responsibilities and limitations of the office. However, since there is just a general list of ombuds responsibilities that's included in the ILA, an ombuds charter was created to further outline the office responsibilities, limitations, and standards by which it will operate. The hope is that the ombuds charter will solidify a shared understanding of the ombuds responsibilities between the RHA, the Implementation Board, the Lived Experience Coalition, and the larger community. Now, this slide provides a high-level overview of the charter's contents, which has been reviewed by both the Regional Homeless Authority and the Lived Experience Coalition. It was also sent to the Implementation Board Executive Committee, and I hope it will be shared with the entire Implementation Board for review and approval very soon. So now that we've reviewed what's behind the foundation of the Ombuds Office, I would like to just briefly discuss what happens when someone contacts the Ombuds Office. So the Ombuds receives the inquiry and/or complaint. We then do an initial review and ask a few preliminary questions during the intake. And once we have a better understanding of the issue, we then determine what would be the appropriate intervention to help resolve it. So those three interventions fall under three categories. Information and referral, which is typically just providing information or referral to a resource. 2, assistance and facilitation, which can best be described kind of like light touch case management, help and navigation that helps provide a pathway from point A to point B, or, an investigation. And if it's an investigation, we will begin the process of fact finding and gathering evidence to determine whether a complaint is substantiated or unsubstantiated. We then issue a report summarizing our findings and process for collecting information, and then inform all parties of that investigation about the outcome. But let me be very clear. Most of the complaints and inquiries that we receive likely can be resolved either through information and referral or assistance and navigation. It's when we recognize that an issue cannot be resolved using these two interventions, that's when we will use investigation as like the best intervention to try to figure out what's going on and resolve the issue. So, kind of sharing all of that, wanting to kind of sum it up and let everyone know kind of, well, what are the current activities and next steps of the office? So the office is continuing to, receive complaints and inquiries. And I have a really amazing team with Raphael Hartman and Donna Andrews, who's really helping to navigate that. However, a big part of kind of what we need to do as an ombuds office is really solidify this joint office structure with the LEC, which I alluded to earlier. What that means is that there's going to be 2 ombuds who are employed by the King County Regional Homeless Authority, 2 ombuds that are employed by the LEC. And that's really, to ensure that accountability and really kind of strengthen and promote the independence of the office. This says finalized charter. I would actually argue that it probably should say approved charter, and that's on me. So when the implementation board gets a chance to kind of review the charter, look through it and hopefully approve it, then the charter will be finalized. Working right now on finalizing our investigation and issue resolution protocols. We're really finalizing a complaint management system. And this is really going to be important because this helps us track the data related to each case, right? So, what was the issue involving the case? How long did it take for us to respond to the case? What was the outcome? What are some of the different graphics if we can get some of that information? So that is the data that we will be collecting in the complaint management system. And the complaint management system also allows us just to have one place to securely keep all of our investigation files or all of our files that might be related to a particular case. And then finally, what's next on the horizon for us is developing and implementing a community engagement plan. And this is going to be really critically important because in some ways the Ombuds office has had a soft launch because of the limited capacity of the team. But, we really need to get out there so people know who our office is and that the office is here as an accountability mechanism to really help people address concerns and the complaints that are coming up in, with different service providers or, within the system as a whole. So that wraps up my presentation about the Ombuds office. I sincerely appreciate your attention today and partnership, and I'm eager to work with you going forward. So thank you so much for your time and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Katara, for the introduction to the Ombuds office and discussion of the Ombuds office. I'd like to open it up to the board for questions and comments. Sorry, now that we've had a good introduction to the, I'm sorry, I see Ben and then Sarah.
Hi, thank you so much for this presentation. I think we should be really proud that we're piloting a new model for Ombuds office in the public sector. I did want to ask a question about how you see your office's role with regards to the broader public. Will this be the channel through which people with inquiries about the business and how the region is responding will be channeling their views into the RHA?
or is this purely for the people who we used to refer to as customers, who I think we now refer to as the community, and then the providers and employees?
No, thank you for that question. I absolutely think the Ombuds office can take, concerns, inquiries, comments from the general public. And I do think that we not only have a responsibility to do that, but also track that. And if there's patterns that we're seeing, or things that we, absolutely feel like we need to elevate to the Regional Homeless Authority, that is absolutely something that we can do. So I do think that, the main, work of the Ombuds office is really, supporting our unhoused community members in navigating complaints, but we do have a role as well as in supporting the larger community and addressing, concerns or things that they want to bring to the Regional Homeless Authority's attention or the system's attention.
And I see Sarah has her hand up as well. Sarah?
Thank you, Simha. Ben asked one of the two questions I had, so thank you, Ben. And that's a very helpful answer. Thank you, KCRHA, and a really, really wonderful and informative presentation. I agree, we're so very lucky, not only to have this approach, but also to have you at the helm of it. My question is, I know there's a lot that the Ombuds office does that is necessarily confidential or protected, but I'm wondering if there's any aspect of what the office does that could be public, that could increase transparency. So for one example, in your answer to Ben, you were talking about receiving feedback and complaints from the community. How much of those sorts of trends, just on a general level, would the general public be able to know? I realize how it goes back into the system and into the authorities' work, but I just think there's a lot of really valuable information that you're probably gathering that I'm wondering if any form of it could be shared with the public.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, the ILA actually requires us to issue reports. And I see that, more of a kind of an annual report. And what you see Ombuds office typically do is they provide at a high level, in the annual report, kind of the data and trends that they're seeing, and also some of the investigations or complaints that they're responding to, of course, keeping that information confidential. So my hope is that, at least, we will be able to do an annual report, and also in our reporting to the implementation board, on trends and things that we're seeing and the data that we're collecting. Those would be ways that, we can kind of elevate transparency of what we're seeing and what we're hearing. I know that we've also kind of, thought about ideas around, well, maybe there could also be a monthly Ombuds newsletter where we're highlighting, some success stories of how we've helped support, individuals navigate the system, right? Or, even in reading that, and that's not necessarily just to promote the Ombuds office, but to show people that, hey, if you reach out to the Ombuds office, it will actually lead to a resolution. So those are some of the things that we're thinking about. I mean, we, can continue to think through that about what that could look like in community, but I would say at least the annual report and kind of the biannual reporting that we'll be doing to the implementation board are things that would be public, and likely we would also post them on our website.
Thanks so much, KCRHA. And Akisha, I see you've got your hand raised as well. If you have a question or comment.
Yeah, my comment, I think just being someone that was a part of it from the beginning, I want to say this the best way I know how, in regards to the last question, for instance, we know that a lot of the unsheltered community, a lot of it is word of mouth, because there's a lot of relationships that were broken, a lot of bridges that are broken in that community. There's not a lot of trust with certain people, so people go by what is told of them, like, oh, this is a good shelter, or that's not a good shelter, or what have you. So I think that with having the Ombuds office in place, while still offering that confidentiality, and in regards to things being public, it still does show that accountability, this is what people are being heard, which is what was the ask, that people are being heard, but not only being heard, but something's being done about it. And it shows that, I guess I can still keep people's names out of it, but the situations that have been going on for years and years and years, you know, being investigated, we're actually putting a solution to some of the concerns and safety issues and health issues and just the plain like inhumanities of what's been going on behind closed doors, and we're finally able to put things to a stop, you know, and I think that that's a healthy relationship and a healthy way to start, because it shows that, hey, people are starting to be people are being accountable now. We're holding people accountable, and not just that, things are going to start changing, and we're doing it in a healthy way. But you're still protected. You're not gonna, like, for us providers, you're not going to get fired for, you know, speaking up and advocating for yourself. And for the individuals, you're not going to get, you know, thrown out in the shelter for advocating for yourself or your friends or your family. So I think it's a healthy way to keep everyone accountable, everyone safe, but still everyone in the know of what's going on, what the solutions are. And so I just wanted to thank you again, KCRHA, for bringing that up and continuously being transparent about this whole process. And yes, so that's kind of all I have to say.
Thank you, Keisha. I appreciate you.
I don't see any further questions. KCRHA, thank you for joining us today. Really greatly appreciate it. Look forward to hearing more of your presentations. Next, we have an update on the 5-year plan from Alexis Mercedes Rank. Thanks for joining us, Alexis.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hope everyone's having a good day. I'm going to share my screen and get going because I know we have some very limited time. Thank you for squeezing me in today, and really excited to share the progress that we've made on the 5-year plan. And I'm sorry, I'm seeing a hand raised from board member Bennett. Awesome, just wanted to check. So I'm going to start off today's presentation with a little bit of an overview of what we went over last time, just by way of a refresher. It's important to uplift that we are not starting from zero in our 5-year planning work. We have the benefit of being able to build on a lot of communities' work and input over the past couple of years. Looking to subpopulation specific reports, such as the Youth and Young Adult CRHA report, to also looking to the fact that our orientation as an agency has been quite community oriented, and we have about a year of community engagement on the sub-regional level and looking at provider engagement levels as well. Our agency has base building spaces, which are really focused around program types, where we are working with service providers and regularly garnering input and learning from them about what they're seeing. We have regular engagement with the Lived Experience Coalition. We also have previous reports like the National Innovation Service Report, looking also at the Regional Action Framework, which has served as kind of the grounding document for our 5-year planning process. And then in July, we ran 40 workshops on a variety of topics. And in those workshops, reached over 400 different individuals. We have 2 standing working groups that have been creating and putting forth and prioritizing specific policies and actions that they would like to see us take up, and those are the vehicle residency work group and the high acuity work group. So we're not starting from zero. It's a matter of now getting very clear on what are the things that we want to take up in the next 5 years to really address the needs of our unhoused neighbors. To also ground us in the fact that our core values remain the same in this work, we are continuing to hold our commitment to centering lived experience and leading with a racial equity lens. And as we've been reminded and encouraged by our Lived Experience Coalition leadership team, that everything within our 5-year plan must operate within this paradigm. As a reminder to the public, our founding legislation requires us to use equitable decision-making framework and principles. And so we are really operating under these principles and this commitment. And I think you'll see this come through as we are developing content around the 5-year plan. Are restructuring our goals? We have system goals, which are tied to objectives. Objectives have initiatives, and initiatives have supporting activities. So our system goals, really, what is our vision for the system over the next 5 years? Our objectives are the things that we need to accomplish in order to work towards achieving that vision. Our initiatives are really coloring that how. How are we going to go about achieving those objectives? And our activities are the specific actions to really make progress. This will also be supportive as we work plan as an agency across the next couple of years. So we can just responsibly plan out when we can take up these activities as we have an abundance of things ahead of us to do. So doing some responsible planning. I'd like to note that when it comes to measuring our progress, we'll be developing metrics tied to that objectives level. These metrics will be translated into a dashboard that will be available on our website over the next year to ensure transparency to the public on how we are working towards achieving progress. To also take us into some more review, at our last implementation board meeting, we had discussed these proposed 6 system goals, and they are expanding capacity for services, significantly reducing unsheltered homelessness, ending homelessness for unaccompanied youth and young adults, ending unsheltered homelessness for families and children in King County, reducing racial disproportionalities and unsheltered homelessness, and further consolidating our homelessness response system, and improving system accountability to folks experiencing homelessness. And so in the last session that we had, we did a walkthrough of each of these and talked a little bit about where they came from and largely how many of them are rooted from the regional action framework and further have been supported by what community partners have been prioritizing in all of our engagement sessions. But for today, I wanted to provide some updates specifically on how the objectives and initiatives development has been going around these system goals. And so with that, one of our legislative requirements and something that has been uplifted by community partners is the need to create tailored approaches when it comes to addressing the needs of specific subpopulations. Additionally, we know that our success is in addressing the needs of our unhoused neighbors is really also contingent on coordination with other systems such as workforce, behavioral health, healthcare, and carceral systems. So a lot of our focus across since the last time we met has been focused on developing content and strategies in these areas. And so looking at the unique needs of high acuity individuals, people living with disabilities, Native and Indigenous communities, immigrants and refugees, Black and African American communities, youth and young adults, families with children, and then vehicle residents, veterans, survivors of gender-based violence, and seniors and elders, and looking at those other system connections as well. So understanding that there are often overlap between, and folks can hold a number of identities across these, we are working to incorporate that lens into all of our work as well. And being able to bring in that lens has largely been facilitated by the use of some tools. So what our team has been up to, we have 12 internal teams across the agency that have been working on putting together some proposed language around objectives and initiatives, really rooted in the available data that we have, what we've heard community partners tell us, and also just what we are seeing as urgent needs. Each team has used the anti-racist strategy chart tool as a first step in really getting grounded in how we can acknowledge intersectionality and also lead with race and how we're developing strategy. Following that, we've been doing synthesis of all the community feedback data and also what we found in the strategy chart processes. And so I want to uplift the staff teams are really leaning into our KCRHA team's expertise, whether it be lived experience, having these identities and having lived experience of homelessness, or they're also work experience, as we have many folks who come from the provider community who have work experience supporting specific subpopulations. With that, as we are preparing this proposed objectives and initiatives language, the next step is really having sessions with community partners to really put forward to them to help us to refine, edit, change, and prioritize in that language. So really bringing forward draft content as a starting place for the conversation to essentially say, this is what we think that we can do in order to best meet the needs of this community based on everything that partners have shared with us and what we're seeing in data. Did we get it right? And then use it as a place to really develop and flesh out some further strategy and further kind of direction. So we have sent out a message to our community partners listserv, which is over 600 individuals. We're doing some targeted invites as well, as we want to ensure that we have appropriate community partners that are supporting these subpopulations a part of the conversations, but we have put out a general call to that large listserv to ensure that we're capturing folks who also have experience working with, again, those list of subpopulations. And then starting this week, we've started working on figuring out our metrics and working largely with the community impact team to develop and talk through what are the metrics to best evaluate our success in achieving some of the proposed objectives. And so a high level look at what the process of drafting the objectives and initiatives are. Again, we're building on that community engagement. We have really taken the time to work through the anti-racist strategy chart process. And again, the staff teams convened based on area of expertise, from work experience to lived experience, and then synthesizing the community feedback, data, strategy chart findings to draft that first kind of round of objectives and initiatives, and having then those community partners weigh in. We have over 70 partners that have signed up through that form alone, and that doesn't include the additional folks that we had brainstormed who need to be a part of weighing in on the draft language. And with that, we'll then hold the community sessions and then work on revisions and continue developing the metrics, with the hopes that we'll be bringing forward some additional draft content for your consideration next month. Taking us to what is kind of our progress in drafting this content, we have my team's sub-regional analytics chapter has been drafted at this point. So we have some solid grounding data around the landscape of all of our services and what we're seeing around the region. This is still in draft form, and so starting to workshop with partners as well. We have 20 objectives in draft form for consideration, and then a list of also 50 supporting initiatives also in draft form. And whether at this stage all of those remain and will be seen in the final draft, it remains to be seen, as some of these might condense or consolidate as we go through the revision process. But this is just to give you a sense of how kind of the draft work is really going. And also want to uplift that through the course of the summer, the procurement team with the community capacity team have been working on a draft equitable procurement manual, which has been just an abundance of work informed by a lot of community engagement to look at ways that we can ensure for more equitable procurement processes. And that's another body of work that will be incorporated into the 5-year plan. We started playing a bit around how to structure the document, and this is something that we're just starting to dive into, but wanted to bring forward today as kind of an initial pass to get your minds around what this document might look like, ensuring that we also are starting off with a section around context and history, knowing that we're standing on the shoulders of giants who have been really shepherding the work over many years, and wanting to honor the history behind this community's work around homelessness, but then also provide context as to the fact that we went through a pandemic and the landscape has dramatically changed, and we're in a quite different scenario than we were a few years ago. So having information related to our context and history, then having that information related to what we're seeing on a sub-regional level in terms of our landscape of services, and then having the layout of goals, objectives, initiatives, having that baseline data, metrics for progress, but then also including funding information. And then having a section related to timelining this out. When do we foresee activities being taken up in which years? And then closing with some appendices that will include the equitable procurement manual and more. That's kind of a first go at what the structure of the document is starting to shape up as. We do expect that to morph and shift a little bit, but wanted to provide something to the board today. And to close out, just a high level look from all of your perspective as board members of what the timeline's kind of looking like. We are positioned to have a full draft 5-year plan for next month's meeting. So with that, we'll be also taking up and revising with community partners throughout the month of November, with again a slated approval by December. And apologize if I went a little fast. Wanted to make sure we made it through all the content to allow for time for questions. So I will stop sharing my screen and happy to take any questions from the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexis. Really appreciate the overview. And you know, I know a number of board members have wanted to be able to share their expertise and feedback, and that you've reached out to folks as well. And appreciate your creating an opportunity in the weeks to come to have a little bit more input for individual board members as you create your draft. Are there questions and comments from the board? Ben.
Thank you, Alexis. I appreciate the update. I've been following along with the previous updates that you've given in this forum and others as well. My question is, it sounds like you're doing a lot of engagement with community partners, and I see that there was a tremendous amount of workshopping done in July. Is there or will there be opportunities for broader public engagement into the 5-year plan? And can you just tell us a little bit of how you're coordinating with some of the local government partners, including the funders, as we move towards what appears to be a very rapid finalization of this plan?
Fantastic question. Thank you. So looking at broader public engagement, the forums for that were actually largely through the workshops in July. Those were workshops open to the broader public. And so as we're looking at formulating various subpopulation specific strategies in that community partners listserv, we have community-based organizations, so outside of our traditional homelessness service provider network, but also including homelessness service providers, folks with lived experience, and anybody who really has experience serving that subpopulation. So we are trying to really get folks who have a degree of expertise in serving those specific subpopulations or working in those systems. So happy to share with the board the link to that opportunity if there are folks within your networks that you would think would be good in weighing in some of those strategies. In terms of your question around our work with government partners, we have a bi-weekly meeting cadence with our government partners. We meet with them on a sub-regional level, and we've been bringing forward this content for workshopping and review, and also providing an opportunity for them to review draft material as well. And so that's another forum in which we are working with government partners. And then I believe I missed your last question. I apologize.
Sorry, just to clarify. So has that happened already, or is that something that will happen with the government partners?
Oh,
and then just to follow.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
And just to follow up on the previous part. So just to make sure I understand, the public engagement you did was through a listserv that you maintain, where you invited people to come and join the workshops. Is that correct?
For a couple clarifications, perhaps. So one. Everything that we have done has run through 2 avenues. So there's targeted outreach towards specific folks, right? Whether they're providers, folks with lived expertise, government partners. You know, Councilmember Herbold wanted a very specific West Seattle forum. We, spun that up. Then there have been numerous public forums that have been posted to the authority website and advertised for any member of the public to attend virtually. And there have been, I believe, some in-person options, although Alexis yes, there have been several in-person options, as I recall. I think Alexis is also not necessarily stating, and I often do this for Alexis, the depth of the work. So the members of Alexis's team, for example, thinking about Sparrow, right? Sparrow alone has run, I think, something like 40 sessions just for Seattle Metro. So like the depth of work that's been done, I really want to elevate quite clearly as very extensive. Additionally, my understanding, and Alexis again can correct me if I'm wrong, but the biweekly calls with the government partners at staff levels have been happening for about 6 months. And so to the extent that leadership needs to be briefed, I will begin that process along with Ann Birkland and Alexis over the next several weeks as we sort of begin to move towards finalization. I was in a meeting, for example, with Deputy Mayor Washington and the mayor's policy team not 2 hours ago, talking about, you know, our Partnership for Zero work, and flagged that I would need to come back next week and start talking about some of our 5-year planning work. So to the extent that like there are, you know, specific questions about interaction, I would encourage folks to direct those to Chief of Staff Ann Birkland and the Government Affairs team. And, you know, she can be more detailed about that. But I want to be really clear that Alexis's work here in terms of engagement has been more than solid. It has been outstanding.
Excellent. Thank you.
Other comments or questions from the board? I do want to share that in the chat, there's been numerous comments just thanking Alexis for sort of the depth of and for presentation and the clarity of it. So thank you for that. Well, that brings us to 4 o'clock and the end of our session today. The next meeting of the Implementation Board will be November 9th. And do we have a motion to adjourn this session?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That was a little quick.
Oh, yeah. We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you soon.